Hey everybody, it's Brooke here from Anita Goodesign, and today I am going to be stitching out with you one of our round votives from our Round Votives collection. Now here's a list of materials that you will need to get started. You will need 2 thread colors, one for your stippling and one for the design. You will also need your round base panel, battery operated candle, tape, vinyl, organza, 1 finished panel, tearaway stabilizer, your base fabric, scissors, your ruler, rotary cutter, and pins. Now to begin, we are going to start by running our first machine step, which will be the placement stitch for our base fabric. Now that we have finished running our placement stitch, we're going to go ahead and remove our hoop from the machine and place our base fabric on top of the placement stitch. You want to be sure that you cover all sides completely and tape it in place. Now that you have finished running your second machine step, which was the tacking stitch for your base fabric, we're going to go ahead and run the placement stitch for our vinyl. And now that we've finished running the placement stitch for our vinyl, we're going to go ahead, remove our hoop from the machine, and we're going to lay our vinyl on top and tape it in place. Now that our vinyl is taped in place, you can go ahead, put your hoop back in the machine, and we're going to run our next machine step, which will be the tacking stitch for our vinyl. Now that we have finished running the tacking stitch for our vinyl, we're going to take a pair of sharp curved applique scissors and trim as close as we can to the tacking stitch line. Once you have finished trimming your vinyl, you're going to flip your hoop over and you're going to trim out your base fabric and stabilizer from inside the placement stitch. Now that we have finished trimming out our base fabric and our access vinyl, it's time to lay our organza down. So take your organza, lay it on top of your design, and tape in place. Now that our organza is taped in place, you can go ahead, place your hoop back into the machine, and run your next machine step, which will be the tacking stitch for your organza. Now that we have finished running the tacking stitch for our organza, it's time to trim the excess material away. Now when you're trimming, you want to make sure that you're not trimming too close so that your organza slips through the stitches. And now that we have finished trimming our organza, it's time for a color change. I've went ahead and threaded my machine with a hot pink thread to match my organza. You can choose whatever you'd like. So go ahead, put your hoop back into the machine and run your embroidery stitch. And now that we have finished the embroidery process for our design, we're going to go ahead and add our lining. You're going to flip your hoop over and tape your lining in place. For our lining, we are using organza. Now that we have our lining taped in place, we're going to go ahead, flip our hoop back over and insert it into the machine. Our next machine step will be our tacking stitch for the lining. And now that we have finished running the tacking stitch for our lining, it's time to run our last machine step, which will be the stippling for our fabric. Now we are going to match our thread to the stippling of our base fabric, so I've chose to use a light pink for our stippling. And now that our design has finished running, we're going to go ahead and remove our design from the hoop and trim it to our desired seam allowance. And now that we have finished trimming out our design, our first panel is now complete. Now for this collection, you are going to need 2 panels and 1 round base. Now we're going to go ahead and show you how to piece yours together, as I've already run my second panel and my round base. And now we're going to take our panels and place them right sides together. Pin or clip in place. And now that we have our 2 panels pinned in place, we are going to go ahead and stitch down both sides of our panel. You are going to leave the top and the bottom unstitched. And now that we have finished stitching down the sides of our panel, we're going to go ahead and remove the pins. It is now time to attach the base. The base is going to be pinned around the seam allowance of the bottom of your panel. Now it's important to remember that our round base has 2 notches in the middle. You're going to take those 2 notches and you're going to line them up with the side seams of your panels. And now that we have our round base pinned in place, we're going to stitch around the bottom of our base, following our seam allowance as a guide. And now that we have finished attaching the bottom base of our panels, we're going to go ahead and flip our design inside out. Now to finish off your design, we're going to double fold your hem and top stitch. And now that we have finished the top stitching for our bag, your new votive bag is now complete. Now it's important to note that when we are using our votive bags, that you're using an LED candle. You do not want to use a regular candle because that is a fire hazard. So we want to go ahead and use these wonderful LED candles. You can get all sorts of different candles for your bag, maybe even ones that have a little remote. You can change the light or the ambiance or atmosphere of the room. Now this collection comes in 12 designs, including 1 base. You have all the color options you can choose from with all the different types of organza. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and we'll see you next time.